Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest with us, someone who has been working and advocating for public sociology, Professor Sari Hanafi. He is currently a professor of sociology at the American University of Beirut and chair of the Islamic Studies program there. He is also the president of the International Sociological Association, commonly abbreviated as the ISA. Apart from that, he also is the editor of Idafat, the Arab Journal of Sociology. Sir, we are extremely privileged to have you here and welcome to our platform Doing Sociology. Thank you for taking time out and navigating these different time zones with us.
Thank you so much, Rituparna and Deepali. Thank you for your invitation.
Yeah. So, our first question is about something, which we have also been trying to do, that is public sociology. And throughout your long professional career as an academic, you've actually practiced as well as advocated for it, which involves both engagement in the public and advocacy. So, can you talk about how sociology plays a role in it, as well as why is it important for social transformation, and what is, the future that we have in terms of public sociology?
Thank you so much. Actually, let me start by Max Weber concept of science as a vocation, where somehow it was a foundational in a way of looking to our main scientific activities and separated from any normative stance. Weber for long has been really the paradigmatical, if you like, our paradigmatical understanding of the profession of sociology, with his so much emphasis on rationality and rationalization as creating a discipline. He was so interested in professionalization of sociology. However, now it's not anymore we can do this kind of understanding of this vocation of our profession. We need to go beyond that. And I think, of course, Michael Barraway, my dear friend and former president of the International Sociological Association, he has this famous conceptualization of public sociology as a separate activities along with professional activities of research, policy activities of research, critical activities of research. For me, I would like even to go beyond Michael Barraway conceptualization, that to talk even epistemologically along with Alain Caillé, the French sociologist, who distinguished between four epistemological imperatives: empirical, conceptual, interpretive, and normative. Let me explain this. When we do sociology, we start by describing a social phenomenon we are studying. And we do it not as a philosopher, we do it very empirically. The second thing we do is to generate models that can explain a social phenomenon. And then we need to interpret this model. And interpreting, it means that is not we are not like in physics, chemistry. There is different interpretations related. What are the factors you put inside the explicative model, or what are the factors you exclude? So interpretation is a fundamental activity of our profession. And finally, is normative. It means that we stand with the deprived community. We stand with the civil society. So we are not, in this meaning, neutral. The objectivity of conducting research doesn't entail neutrality vis-a-vis different actors and different injustice that we find in our societies. So, we side with the social justice, we side with equality, with the freedom, with the pluralism, these, if you like, the key concepts of liberalism. So, historically, what happened, I would say, and even the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze argued that often with the left and many social scientists, they perceive the world in terms of relationship that begin from the most distance and then move inward. For instance, if you look to the social inequality, you will factor in the imperialism, the colonialism, which is very important, of course, to understand the global social injustice. So the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze argued that the left, and with it the social scientists, perceive the world in terms of relationships that begin from the most distant and move inward. And the question, if we take, let's be concrete, social inequality, we often put so much emphasis on imperialism, external factors, and colonialism, which is absolutely very important to understand our global injustice. But then when they reach to talk about their society, the locality, they use again an abstract concept like social classes, and then they are almost exhausted. Many non-governmental organizations, civil society actors, they work in the opposite. They put too much. They put much emphasis in the bottom. They look to the family, community, in the local level, and then they scale up to national and maybe humanity level. So I think this is where public sociology is very important. Public sociology is we need to work in the bottom with the people. Without this way of doing things, we will become elitist and very detached, and even we don't understand what is going on. Arlie Hirschhorn, the American sociologist, was very clear about this, that actually the Tea Party and later on become Trump supporters are really, they have a real claims about justice. So they are not simply a racist. So here, where it's important that we need to listen to these people, and when we work on the level of community, we should be guided by the notion of care, love, if you like, and all this notion is extremely important. And let me add something that I think is crucial, that historically we side with the civil society, but then we need to extend our sociological mission beyond the civil society toward what Jeffrey Alexander, the American sociologist, called civic sphere. It means that we need to include family, religious groups, scientific and corporate associations, bounded geographical regional communities, and so on. So by incorporating this, our mission become not only side with the civil society, but establishing dialogue between these different entities within this public spheres. So this is what, if you like, I wanted to put into emphasis, that public sociology is not only about providing cognitive validity claims and normative argumentations in the public sphere, but also to account for emotion and if you like, value commitments. What Hans Joas, the German sociologist, put emphasis. So by doing this, we change our sociology from simply focusing in the descriptive, conceptual sphere to interpretive and normative spheres. And this is really what entail public sociology. And if so public sociology is by definition is a connection between our sociology and the moral philosophy. There is a question of ethics. What kind of ethics we need for our society? Do we need it a la Paul Ricoeur format, who put emphasis on the question of living with and for the others, or only with the others? So and whether we will work our ethics of love, hospitality, solicitude, and care with and for others, practical reason or humanity that can be fully expressed in just institutions, because he said the aim of living with and for the others in a just institutions. It means that the power structure, we should keep an eye on it. It's a question of democracy. We need democratic institution to be able to empower the deprived people, those with whom we would like to live.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that answer. So, our next question is again on your writings. So you've written at length about the Palestinian refugee camps with a focus on questions of governmentality over the more conventional discourse, which is on sovereignty. So could you tell us a little more about this, about your thesis, and how it differs from the more conventional discourse when discussing the experience of refugees?
Yeah, if you like, I am a Palestinian refugee, grew up in refugee camps in Damascus, Yarmouk camp. So I saw, if you like, how a camp can be well or badly governed. I moved to Palestinian territories, where I work on Palestinian Research Center dealing with Palestinian refugee issues. And there I conducted many research projects on the question, on many aspects of Palestinian refugees, but I was very sensitive who governed the camps. And who governed the camps, because I think we cannot look to the camp as a place where the state is governing it, the host country state. There is multiple actors within the camps. So if you like, my sociology about refugee camps was a multiple criticism, multiple critique, double critique of those local actors. It's called popular committees, and how they are governing indemocratically their community, and how the government, whether come from the UN, because just to remind you that we have a special UN agency called UNRWA dealing with Palestinian refugee problem, And since 48, established in 1950, this agency. And the role of the host government to show that we cannot understand what is going on in the camps without looking to the microphysics of power, to talk like Michel Foucault, if you like, where this multiple actors is playing a role. And of course, I am famous with the concept of phantom sovereignty about UNRWA, that, for instance, it's very interesting, this UN agency, they have an office called camp officer, and then it is written in Arabic, the equivalent of camp director. So they are pretend that they are directing the affairs of the camps, but whenever there is a comparison issue, they said, no, we are simply an officer of the camps. We are not governing the camps. So I was interested that about the escapism of UN officers when it comes to a real problems of the camps, as sanitary problems, violence, domestic violence, political issue of the camps. I don't understand why when Israeli and authorities, army in 2001, when they invade Jenin camp, I don't understand why the UN agency didn't claim to say those who find their place destroyed in the Jenin camps, why should they go simply to Jenin city and not to their place of origin, which is in the next border of Jenin, and it's almost an empty place. It's a place where it's if you like, it's a plantation for a kibbutz in Israel. So this is where I argue that how the governance become somehow repressing the entity of the Palestinian as a political entity and reduce it to a bare life. I mean, a body to be sheltered and fed. So UNRWA is doing very good work, but I wanted a solution to the Palestinian refugee problem. And this is, you cannot understand a solution without factor in different level of actors who play a role on the governmentality of Palestinian refugee camps. And final word on this is, when you study this refugee camps in Lebanon, where things are the most outrageous, where I used to conceptualize camps as a space of exception, because the government say, I exclude the Palestinians from all the rights in Lebanon. They don't have the right to work, to own the properties. And just to remind you, we are now 4 generations of Palestinians. So imagine 4 generations, you don't have the right to work or to own the properties in a place where you live. So what the meaning of this exclusion? But they are included as what? As a consumer. So they pay the taxation. They pay for all the service, but they are excluded as a human being. They need an urban regulation. They need to live the right to the city, to talk like Lefebvre, the famous French sociologist, that the right of every citizen, I mean, part of our citizenship, to be to have the right to the city and not to be in a slum area, not able to access the city.
Okay, so sir, you've also looked at space, of course, has been a recurring theme across your works, and you've also spoken of spacious side of land in the Arab-Israel conflict. Can you talk more about how land becomes very important, and also strategies of dislocation and dispossession that are used by the Israeli state, as well as how the refugee camp becomes this space of exception where surveillance and control takes place?
Yeah, thank you for this very important question. Again, it's me who forged this concept, spatiocide, and this is, if you like, to argue that you don't understand the Palestinian-Israeli conflict as a genocidal one. I mean, the Israelis are so smart that they don't do something like Rwanda or so it was some massacre, but not genocide, if you like, during the conflict from 1948 until today. So what I noticed that in fact they moved their slogan, land without people for people without land. Okay, so land, claiming that the Palestinian land was empty of people for the Jews who come from Europe, etc., people without land for this land, to make it more subtle. We need more land and less people. So in order to that, they have a many mechanism of making the Palestinian land unlivable. You cannot live inside. So this is what I meant by spatiocide, killing the space, if you like. And I showed that the Israeli colonial practice, specifically in West Gaza, was governed by three principles: principle of colonization, principle of separation, and the state of exception as mediating between these two principles. So principle of colonization, Israeli, until today, every day there is land confiscation, destroying houses, claiming that they are illegally built on Palestinian territories land. And this is, if you like, this is according to UN and the Oslo process, etc. This is the West Bank and Gaza should go to the Palestinian state. This is the principle of colonization. They keep colonizing lands, but at the same time, they don't want people. So they will separate those who live in West Bank and Gaza to say, you don't have access to Jerusalem. Jerusalem become to us Jews on Israel, and you are not allowed to go there. So and this is two, if you like, this two principles are in contradictory, because colonization means more involvement in West Bank and Gaza. But the separation want to say, no, we don't want population. We want simply to separate you. To separate you. So if you want to separate us, leave us alone. Don't come and colonize us more. So, and I show how this game, how the sovereign using the law to suspend the law. This is in Carl Schmitt models and Giorgio Agamben, if you like, conceptualization of state of exception. I show that how Israelis, they use this many regulation to keep the Palestinians in a small area of territories, and this area unlivable. So they leave more and more. They leave, and of course, I co-edit with my two colleagues, Adi Ophir and Giovanni, a book, The Power of Inclusive Exclusion, the anatomy of the Israeli rules in the occupied Palestinian territories, to explain this game of exclusion and inclusion, that in fact, in the end of the day, Israel is taking more land and less people. So this is, if you like, the basic meaning of space society.
Right. So, in your book, Knowledge Production in the Arab World, The Impossible Promise, you've looked at the historical trajectory of creating scientific communities and research in the Arab world, and also its interaction with globalization. So, can you shed some light on the politics behind it and your approach to examining this whole process? How do such knowledge economies influence the way one approaches research in the first place, with the idea of publishing globally, perishing locally in the context of the global south?
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Actually, my book that I co-edited with my colleague and friend Riga Sarbaniti about the knowledge production in the Arab world, The Impossible Promise that you mentioned. This book is to first to talk about scientific communities and to show that without scientific communities, research cannot be operated. You need to create entity to protect yourself. Science cannot influence policymaker, cannot be an agent of public awareness without having a scientific community. So I noticed that not much scientific associations and organizations are active in the Arab world. So you end up a researcher work solo or at the best in research team. And of course, I noticed that not much of institutionalization of these research teams. But in any case, what the major message of this book is the following: that we have a good news that the Arab world finally enter into the map of knowledge production in the world. So you see a good percentage of increasing the growth of publication in platform like Scopus, Web of Science, and others. But in the same time, it's knowledge produced but not used. So the nexus with the public activities, and we talk in the beginning to this very important issue, public sociology, or to the policy, is very, very weak. And I look more thoroughly to knowledge production, to profile of researchers, to find, in fact, three profiles. First, those who publish globally and perish locally. I have some colleagues. I'm in an elitist university, American University of Beirut, and I have many, many colleagues that they are not known in the Arab world. They publish in highly impact journals, and they have a message to international communities without taking care of what is how this message can be translated locally and regionally. Or you have another profile: publish locally and perish globally. Those who publish only in Arabic, and they are not interested in establishing conversation with their peers internationally. And it's really a pity, because it's often it's a good knowledge production, but in fact it's very local and sometimes become parochial, if you like. And then there is many national universities. You end up having researchers who perish locally and globally. It means that they don't publish much in social science. So if you like, this is one of the major outcomes of my research on this regard. But I would say that also what is important is to show that it's not, there is always you need to look in a dialectical way between institution and researcher. It's not only responsibility of institutions. For instance, to have a promotion criteria which enable people to publish locally and internationally, and not only to look to the point system, for instance. But also it's a responsibility of a researcher. And this is why more and more I am part of the convivialist movement head by Alain Caillé, Frederic Wedenberg from Brazil, and others, that we are very interested on not only on power structure. We are interested to say, where is our ethics as individual researcher? How we will, if you like, be aware of the conflict, but how we mediate between different actors, not to these actors to massacre each other. So the individual levels is very important, the agency of the researcher. And the agency of the researcher means that this is responsibility of Arab researcher to transgress all this structural problem, environmental problem. We should remember that the Arab world governed by many authoritarian regimes. I would say almost there is 2 or 3 countries where you don't have authoritarian regime: Tunisia, a little bit Morocco, but it's a terrible situation. So this affects so much the knowledge production. So you need to remind people their responsibility, how to produce good research, where in the same time look to the superstructure, the government, the politics, etc., and to the bottom, and to ally yourself with the community. This, if you like, one of the major argument of my work.
So the last question is actually related to this. We are seeing the rise of authoritarian and populist regimes all over the world in the last few years. So in that case, what would you think would be some of the challenges to global sociology, particularly drawing from your recent works on sociology of religion?
Thank you so much. Yes, I think if you like, me as a president of International Sociological Association, if you like, something is dear to my heart is how we produce a genuine global sociology. And why I mean genuine global sociology, because it's not simply if you write without mentioning a place about a social phenomenon, it's a global sociology. I argue that there is 3 requirements, 3 principles for a global sociology to be genuine: the positionality, the comparatism, and the mild universalism. About the positionality, it means that there is no global sociology without see clearly from the very beginning that I took from the vantage point of the Arab world. I am influenced, this is my biography, and this will influence the way I look to things. So this is very important, the positionality. And then you need to go beyond what the late called methodological nationalism. It means that just to look to a social problem within the confine of the nation state. The contrary, you need to look to, if you like, to do comparison, and this comparativism is to have an eye to the globe and not to our problem. And I think COVID-19 today show us how really the crisis of the environment, specifically if we consider that the COVID-19 started in China with this animals eating this weird animal to be eaten, if you like, bungalow bat and things like that. You need, there is no local solution to COVID-19. We need to enhance the nexus between society and environment to understand, and the other, if you like, the other is part of ourself. The other is not only the Indian, if I am in India, the other is also the Pakistani, the Afghanistan, is America, is Europe, and so on. So this is, if you like, where the comparatism is very important. The last principles is the mild, what I call mild universalism. Why mild? First, why universalism? I know a lot of post-colonial scholars, they don't like this more and they hate it. But I do believe that there is no science without a minimum of universality. But this time, universality is not in this as a discipline. So you don't have a universal sociology, but you have a universal concept like social science, like democracy, like secularism. You don't have or secular values, human rights, women rights, and so on. So I say we need to look to this concept, to have a cross-cultural discussion about it. So this is a condition of multi-universalism. Other condition, that there is no tilio. It means that it's a historical experience of the humanity. Think about democracy, for instance. It's not the end of the political system. The end, it means that the best necessarily for forever. No. So there is no tilio, but it's so far the human experience showed this is the best regime we can have, political regime. And the third, we should take it as imaginary and not as a model to be replicated. So if I keep the concept of democracy, democracy as a rotation of power, as a principle of freedom of expression, freedom of composing association, things like that. But I don't want the American to write the Iraqi constitutions. I don't want the Russian today to write the Syrian constitution. So this is why it's imaginary and not a model to be replicated. And just to give an example, flagrant examples, it's a secularism. The secularism as a distinction between what is political and what is religious is really universal. You cannot today operate without a clear distinction between the institutions, or religious institutions and state institutions, because we deal with citizens, and citizens, they have plurality. They can be religious or non-religious, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslims, Christian, and so on. So separation is very important. But at the same time, if you say no, it's more than separation. It's also decline of religiosity. I'm not sure. It's not universal. In India today, it's not decline of religiosity, neither in the Arab world, neither in Brazil, nor in America, by the way. So it's so again, this is not universal. This is really very European this declining of religiosity. It's not about keeping the religion outside of the public spheres. I mean, why? And I think now the new conceptualization of a philosopher, a disciple of Habermas, her name is Maeve Cook, an Irish philosopher, say clearly that any argument can be in the public spheres, including religious one. The important is that argument should not be authoritarian. And authoritarian, it becomes authoritarian if we put it like absolute, like no discussion, like doesn't have the input of the history, the context. In that case, so I think now we need to account for the importance of the religion, and this is part of my sociology, if you like. I cannot today understand any social phenomenon without this intersection between economic spheres, political spheres, social spheres, religious spheres together. You understand it as a one logic in a totality, exactly like Marcel Mauss and Polanyi, Karl Polanyi did. And so I'm glad my friend Bandana Parketiaha, that you interview her, talk about intersectionality. And she started by talking about the intersection between class, sex, and ethnicity and race. Okay, and then she said, and what about religion? And I'm so glad how she thought that more and more religion is important in this intersectionality. So in this intersectionality, you need to go to the bottom and to see how people are religious. And instead of saying, no, we are rational and you are religious, and it's and this dichotomy is unbridgeable. No, it's not true. I mean, I see the debate today, even in the heart of the secularism in France. I mean, whether they will decriminalize the incest, about the gay marriage, about pedophilia, in which age start the consent, accepted or not. All these issues are unethical issues where the Christianity and the Judaism impact in the French context will play major role, and they hide that. But this is and the same thing they construct in France a Christian laicite, secularism. Why I call it Christian? Because they enforce the Muslims, these people who came after colonization. They came as a cheap labor. They were extremely instrumental in post Second World War. They have a religion whose the veil of woman is part of their ritual. So they don't tell them no, religion is a conscience, and conscience you can exercise it in your home and in the church. No, the Islam is not like this. The same thing I don't know about Buddhism. It's not like this, etc. So we need to be very careful. I love the humanism. I love this idea of live together, convivial way in a pluralistic society. But we don't, and this is the sense of universalism. But mild universalism, because it's not you impose something as a model to all this society. Let me finish by saying one of the major conflict today in the Arab world between elite, they don't talk to each other, the secularist à la française, à la French model, and and they are very minority often, and with the mass, which is religious, and they don't want this French secularism, and this conflict is there. And of course, it's a funny, somebody like Sarkozy. I saw documentary, a French president, the former French president, when he was asked why he received Gaddafi, the Libyan dictator, and he said, because he is secular. So it become like a secular is sufficient to say this is my ally, even if he is authoritarian, genocidal. He governed for more than 50 years, and it's terrible. France now, you look who is the ally of France? All these dictators, from Sisi on Egypt, and actually, and this is where I see the convergence between populism and authoritarianism. And this is what alarms me so much these days, that this alliance, that's Sisi go to France to purchase arms, and Macron sacrifice all the human rights principles and give him the highest award, French award, for somebody. It's I mean, who in Egypt today, 60,000 prisoner of opinion there. All the opposition is in the prison.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for this interview. We completely understand that you must be having an extremely busy schedule, and if you've taken time out to do this small interview for Doing Sociology. And you've talked so much about a true global sociology, and how one could forward the cause of public sociology, something which our blog Doing Sociology has been trying to do in a very small way in India. And we really hope that our viewers would take a lot from this interview, from this, from whatever you've said, especially when they're trying to, make sense of contemporary social phenomena, how an intersectional approach is extremely important. And we do have to take into account everything from the economy to the polity to religion. So again, a very, huge thank you, sir, for taking time out for doing this interview with us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm so glad to talk with you and to the Indian sociologists and to the world. Actually, it's once it's online, you don't control who will listen to.
Absolutely, and I also feel that's a part of democratizing knowledge, no, the online part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think this is one of the assets of COVID-19. I mean, to let us think about our connectivity, about how when you don't have this physical encounter, how we can enhance spiritual one. I mean, really, I mean, again, all this virtuality, I mean, can bring other dimensions of the human communications.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for those
Pleasure,
words, as well
pleasure,
as, for the
pleasure.
interview.